Hi, my name is Thomas Beery from Högskolan Kristianstad, and together with Matthias Sandberg, I'm going to be presenting some ideas to get us thinking before our gathering for the Tankesmedjan in Stockholm in April. I'm going to present research that my colleague, Dr. Christy Leckis of Ohio State University, shown in this picture, and I have been engaged in since 2012. But I'd like to start with getting us thinking about friluftsliv. Now, it's a big idea, lots of definitions. However, one of my favorites is from Dr. Johan Öhman of Örebro Universitet. And he writes, friluftsliv as an upbringing that in the first hand is about developing a personal relationship to nature from one's own experiences. I really appreciate this definition because as an environmental educator, I'm keenly aware of the potential and the possibility of nature experience to support cognitive, affective, and physical development in children. Speaking of children, another focus of our gathering, I think if we put children and the idea of friluftsliv together, we have to think of different definitions for friluftsliv. A friluftsliv that might be a lot more about play, about getting dirty, about exploring, all right, and fantasy perhaps, mystery. Gary Nablon described sort of his difference in these nature experiences when he would travel with his young children and arrive at a beautiful place. He described it like this. Whenever we arrived at such a promontory, Dustin and Laura Rose would approach it with me, then abruptly release their hands from mine to scour the ground for bones, pine cones, sparkly sandstone, feathers, or wildflowers. Now, there's a good chance these children left with their father with their pockets full of treasure. But I'm interested, as a researcher, in what these children left that place with in their heads, in their hearts, and in their bodies. Right? A sensory experience described well by Louise Chawla, environmental educator, in the following way. She writes, children in play who literally live close to the ground and up against the full sensory quality of things. And this is the focus of my research I want to present today, a friluftsliv that's all about close to the ground and up against the full sensory quality of things. Now, Matthias and I mentioned in our description for this workshop about research that explores childhood well-being and nature experience. And there's a wealth of great research. I present just one site here, the Children in Nature Network, that is an excellent portal to many fine studies of cognitive, affective, and physical wellness and well-being from nature experience. All right, let me talk more specifically about my research with Dr. Leckis. We've been looking at childhood collecting in nature. And what I mean by childhood collecting in nature is this self-willed, self-determined activity that children partake in that involves gathering, collecting sticks, leaves, rocks, feathers, nature items, sometimes for play, like sticks turning into swords or grass turning into a delicious soup, and sometimes for prized collections, like these lovely shells in the picture here. We draw on many different theories to support our work, and we can talk. I'm not going to talk about these theories now, but we can talk about some of these theories if that's of interest in our gathering in April. Our recent study, or phase of the study, involves college students in Kristianstad. Here's a picture of a few Kristianstad college students. Those of you who know your geography know that the picture was not taken in Kristianstad. We asked college students in a survey about their childhood nature experience and about their childhood collecting. And I have a great deal of interesting data. I'm not going to talk about all that data. I'm going to stick specifically to interviews that we did conduct then as follow-up to the survey. One survey item I would like to share, though, is that 85% of our 400 respondents, survey respondents, indicated that they did indeed collect from nature as children, at least occasionally, if not more often. But as I said, I want to talk about one sort of offshoot of our survey, and that was interviews that we conducted. We wanted to get more detailed information from these respondents about some of the responses that we found interesting on the survey. And one of the sort of striking themes from an analysis of the interview data was sensory memory. Every single one of our interviewees talked about their sensory memory. They had sensory-rich memories that they were willing to share, interested in sharing. Lots of great detail. I'm just going to share a few samples of that sensory memory detail now. One respondent said, "I had a stone I laid upon. It was always warm against the stomach. It was along the shore. I would usually swim to it and lay on it. We had a small cave, and it smelled like rock. Whenever I smelled the resin from pines, I must have been 6 or 5, and I remember being out in the woods walking, and there's this moose in front of me. Actually, me and my mom, and we freeze. I remember the smell of pine." We also went to their island and took their eggs. We ate them. They are the best eggs you can find, soft-boiled, and they are delicious. So sensory memories. Beyond sensory memory, another theme that emerged from the data was variation, difference, uniqueness. Many of our respondents talked about their interest in finding this variation, perhaps diversity. Here's some examples. There was a special place to find seashells, not fossils, river shells, but it was so exotic. But yeah, this is something that belongs to the seaside and not here. It was something real exotic. My dad worked in the forest, and he knows everything about trees. So I tried to collect different kinds of leaves just to try to organize them. You know, what kind of species. Another theme, beyond this theme of difference or variation, was the theme of environmental ideas, such as cycle or cyclical processes. Let me show you a few examples of that. Seeing the trees and listening to the birds, and also the sound of this certain bird. It's called a yerk. It goes cuckoo. They pop up quite early in the spring. You get a feel for the cycle of the year. The buds, the leaves, then the leaves falling off and changing color, and that kind of stuff. Where I lived was a suburban area outside of Stockholm. We had a forest. Well, not a big forest, but for me as a child, it was a big forest. And it had ponds in there, and they had tadpoles. So I collected tadpoles, and we had an aquarium at home, so I brought them home and watched them develop to frogs, and then released them at the pond. So this theme of cycle came up again and again in the interviews. So another theme I want to share with you is a theme of the respondents pondering their own environmental understanding, or where that environmental understanding may have come from. Here's a few examples. It makes you wonder a lot why things are what they are, why leaves turn brown in the fall, and so on. I learned to ask from seeing the changing nature. You wonder about everything, and you keep asking, and then put some pieces together by yourself. Here's another. There were these puddles with the alive shells, the snails inside. I just watched them and saw how they worked. And then in my teen years, I went to biology. I learned more about it from the teacher. How it worked, how they ate. Well, I was interested probably more than the other kids. I wanted to learn more about what I had been collecting. So, collecting that seemed to spur larger questions about environmental ideas. And even just the nature of their interest came out in these interviews. The nature of the curiosity. Let me share just a couple more quotes. I don't know. The sea is mysterious for me. It's just, where was it in the sea? How did it come to the sand? Did it die in the water? Did it die on the beach? Things like that. So sometimes we would start in the springtime. You find the egg and you brought that in, and then you see how the little frog from just a little point got legs, and then they got really frogs. And then we let them out. I think we learned. So here, respondents thinking about their own learning process via these nature experiences. So, what I'm shared with you today, briefly, is how this research is getting my colleague and I, Dr. Leckys, to think about how these collecting experiences may be contributing to a foundation for environmental understanding. All right, and yes, the kind of research I've just shared with you briefly can be criticized as selective memory, or might have examples of memory bias, or concerns about memory accuracy, and those are real concerns that we need to think about. However, Louise Chawla encourages us to find ways to foster the kind of nature experiences with children that come to figure so prominently in our own positive memories. So what is it about these positive memories that I've shared with you that might be useful in understanding how we come to understand the things we do through the experiences that we have as children? Now, running out of time. So looking ahead to Stockholm, I'll be interested in your comments and questions. Of course, I'm going to want to talk more about implications. Just what does this research mean? And where, what does it mean for teachers? What does it mean for parents? What does it mean for urban planners? What do we do with this kind of research and other related research about childhood nature experience? And I'd like to share with you a little bit about where we're taking this research, how we're trying to take interview data and now match it or look at it together with observations of children in forest kindergartens in Norway. So lots of good things to talk about when we get together in Stockholm in April. Thank you, and I'll see you in Stockholm.